So many of you will soon, not now, next year start preparing for placement. Some of you have already given your GREs and TOEFLs and whatnot for masters in US, Canada, Australia, UK, etc. Many of you are probably going to sit in placements, and a lot of people know that colleges don't necessarily prepare students perfectly for campuses, and they can't. The requirements have been changing at an unprecedented scale. Things used to be difficult for 10, 15 years ago, but now it is more difficult than ever because the industry itself is evolving at such a rapid pace that everything that we know is already outdated in 6 months. That's how quickly, because of AI, because of Claude, because of all of these agentic technologies, things are evolving. So there's a certain science also to how do you all be prepared for the real world, for corporate life, because it's not harder than engineering, it is just different. In colleges, you are graded. In corporate life, you are evaluated. There is outcomes, there's lots of different parameters, and not everyone understands it instinctively, and no one really explains it to you. So I'll move on to the next slide and explain what I'm trying to. Second. So corporate life, what it actually is, you are given a particular role by an organization, and the role is not necessarily of someone who can code a solution. It is someone who can solve a small component of a critical problem or a larger component of a critical problem. So you're there for problem solving. Coding is just a means to an end. Um, you are paid to reduce risk. You are paid to address certain problems. So it begins with reliability. It doesn't matter how smart you are if you cannot reduce things reliably. Uh, by that, I mean, if you are used to studying things the day before the exam, which is something that I personally was very used to. I used to not be a very sincere, intelligent student. I was very habitual to exams. I would follow Java, easy solution right now. Yeah, for the last minute papers, they come, that's it. That doesn't help prepare you for corporate life because you have to be not on your necessarily A game, but you have to be competent because that is what you're hired for, and you have to be producing reliably. Sprints होती है corporate life में. Everyone is given work in smaller chunks. So you're given work for a 1 week chunk or a 2 week chunk, and you're supposed to report on a almost daily basis what exactly is your contribution. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि 3 दिन कुछ नहीं किया, चौथे दिन लगा कि चलो अब कर लेते हैं. And then you start and then you realize that your environment needs some things for which that will take another 2 days. And you're dependent on someone else and that someone else is on leave. That is why there's a lot that has to be done on the planning front even before you begin, which is why you have to be reliable. Like erratic genius, like I've written, will not help get you anywhere. For most of you, for some of you, probably like you're like Einstein level genius, doesn't really matter. This presentation's not for you. For everyone else who is looking for a good job and well-paying jobs, you have to be reliable. Then comes in technical skill. Now, again, I'll pick an example from back when we were studying. There were some students who, even in the fourth year of engineering, couldn't compile basic code. I know that's not the case with a lot of you guys because, again, the post GPT world is different. Um, the expectations that an organization will have from you will be different. So technical skill is the absolute baseline. It's not differentiation. It's not about someone being technically better than other people. You all have to have minimum level of competency in all aspects of technical areas. So whether it is algorithms, whether it is databases, whether it is systems engineering, whether it is understanding agentic capabilities, because a lot of companies require you to be able to work in a team with different people, all having different skill sets. So you need to understand things enough and then be technically competent in everything that you're doing as a bare minimum baseline. And whatever your work is, that will shape the perception that you will have in your organization, whether it's a 50 people company or a 50,000 people company. It is going to be your work and your visible work, how you do things, when you do things, your presentation, your notes, your written summaries, your reports. These are the ones that incredibly matter. So, a few other things about just college में थोड़ा सा क्या होता है in corporate में. Colleges, you given a simple problem like define a neural network for the purposes of understanding how hyperparameters work. Uh, Corporate में वैसा होता नहीं है. You're given a problem statement, you're given some crap data and told try to make a model that can do something with it because this is what we're getting in real life. So you have to be the one doing feature engineering, data cleaning, figuring out some sort of correlation, p-values, and trying to come up with some metric that will actually solve the problem because there is no one else that you can turn to. There are seniors and mentors that you can go and ask questions, but your questions can only be limited to a certain level of understanding of the ecosystem that you are newly a part of. It can't be getting them to solve the problem for you. And you can't even, post everything in chat GPT and say कि ये करके दे दो मुझे जैसा assignments में आज I'm sure many of you are doing it. Just throw in the problem statement, get chat GPT to do it, remove M dashes, print it, and that's it. That is not acceptable solution in a lot of corporates. A lot of corporates simply ban usage of external AI. Their internal AIs are not at the mark that can help solve the problems for you. That doesn't mean that there aren't organizations that are like adopting AI at a higher level in terms of problem solving capabilities. But in early careers, you don't want to handicap yourself by completely being reliant on these technologies. Um, then comes in individual contribution on campus, whether you're working by yourself or you're working in a group of one or two or three people, even if there's failure, there's not that big of a difference. आपका project में कचरा भी हो गया. Like if everything is horrible, you can still one man solo it. But on a corporate level, you can't do that because your corporate output is directly tied into an expectation with other people's output. And the whole pie is what is solving problem for the company, saving money, or helping the company not cost money, which means the failure that you have can very easily compound to tens of thousands of dollars of lost value. And subsequent failures can also simply mean being fired. And you all want to be mindful of that. So that's the reason it's a little important to know that individual accountability matters a lot more. फिर एक और चीज आती है about communication and etiquette. Now, थोड़ा बहुत I've already explained about work quanta, and a lot of these are generic stuff that I'm sure most of you know, already have some idea about. But as you start working, it'll make more sense. So this whole presentation today is not a whole lot about how to only get you prepared for work, but it is for how do we set you up for success after your day one, from your day one. How? So उसमें communication and etiquette is extremely important because first impression is the last impression. Your tone, the way in which you communicate. It doesn't matter whether you're Gen Z, Gen Alpha, Gen Beta, whatever generation you are. In a corporate language, your tone and the way you communicate has to be extremely professional. Even if you're working for, a marketing company with all the younger people, you still want to have a very professional tone. Your emails need to still look like they're written by, a 45, 50-year-old millennial. I highly recommend watching this movie called The Intern with Robert De Niro, and it'll talk about this exact environment of, even if the energy around you is completely different, you can still carry class and character and etiquette with you in whatever organization you are in, whether it's Indian Army, whether it is Amazon, whether it is Deepinder Girls United, or just any organization. Right? Um, then comes in updates. It is always good for your immediate managers and other people in the organization to know what you're working on before them having to ask you for updates. So last minute updates ki jagah pe upfront summaries, hey, this is something I'm working on. I just wanted to show you before I submit it at the end of the week. This is something that you can tell your manager. Or I'm wanting your feedback on one or two of these things, of these directions that I'm thinking about preparing this report in. या फिर एक model में, like I'm building a model, here's some features that I have, here's some analysis of A/B testing that shows A model versus model B with different sort of parameters in the outcome. Can you recommend which one looks better for what our end goal is, or something along those lines? This is your immediate managee relationship, but also with the other people in the organization. the CTOs, the CEOs, the C-suites. You don't want to waste that time. You don't want to suck up to them. You don't want to be a chatokar. In colleges, classroom, mein, being a teacher's pet can work. In corporates, टीचर्स पेट वाला कॉन्सेप्ट नहीं होता है बट एक रिलायबल इंडिविजुअल कंट्रीब्यूटर वाला कॉन्सेप्ट होता है यू हैव टू बी एक्सट्रीमली गुड इन योर कम्युनिकेशन टू कम्युनिकेट व्हाट इज इट एग्जैक्टली दैट यू डन and if you are ever stuck on something then it is also important to update ki this is a blocker that you're having. The blocker can be because of client side से कुछ information नहीं आ रही है. Obviously, you can't directly approach them to involve the relevant people early on rather than waiting for 2 weeks and then saying ये मैं नहीं कर पाया. ये जो नहीं कर पाया या मैंने नहीं किया या मैंने नहीं सोचा is loser mentality and really disrupts trust and any growth potential in the future. Unfortunately, I've interacted with many people who've had this mentality, but I've also on the flip side interacted with people जिनको I've had to barely give them half a problem statement, and then they do the job of asking after watching half the problem statement of here are 5 questions that I have about this so that I have a better understanding. And again, this is where you can use AI to the betterment of your understanding of any problem that you're asked. Before you even begin work in the planning stage, ask. Ask more questions about these are certain assumptions that I have. Are these assumptions correct? Here are some things about timeline. Here are some parameters about any other equations in the variable. It's very important to ask क्योंकि इन सब चीजों के साथ में your effort is visible if you are communicated before. Unclear work is assumed incompetence. Not giving timely updates is definite incompetence. And coming up with any excuses, you really don't want to be the person. None of you. Oh, I'm sure there are problems that will happen on the personal front. There are problems that will happen on the professional front. But you should never come up with some sort of bullshit excuse. क्यों काम नहीं हुआ? और ये how do you avoid that? To communicate beforehand on जितना काम हुआ है. If you're given a task in 4 days, and if you are telling on day 4 nahi hua, so that is see the grounds for failure. You'll be put on performance improvement and then fired in 2 weeks. So it's better to then update on day 1. यहाँ पे मैं इतना कर रहा हूँ, यहाँ पे मैं इतना कर रहा हूँ. There's some mistake that I'm running in. Can someone help course correct? Corporate lingo होती है. Use ChatGPT. Help corporate lingoize my ask so that your ask also sounds more work appropriate. It's very easy to do that. Stakeholders and the career ladder. So here it is important. ये कब काम में आता है जब you've already worked for a few weeks, couple months हो गए. Now you're thinking more about growth. कि चलो आपकी onboarding हो गई है, आप सिस्टम में सब समझ चुके हो सारे MCP से क्या डेटाबेस क्या किधर jargon है कंपनी के. What is the company's expectation of you? What is your sort of sprint schedule? Who is it that you're reporting to? Who are the power brokers? Not only the immediate managers, but the other people who can influence your career and your growth. उसमें सबसे पहले तो आते हैं of course आपके मैनेजर आते हैं क्योंकि he directly comments on and is helping your report card not only at the end of the year but also throughout the year in pitching for you so that tomorrow if you get a better option somewhere else, if your manager really likes you, he'll figure out what he needs to do to keep you. So, and that helps with raises, that helps with compensation reevaluation, that helps with lots of other perks that become otherwise difficult. So, again, this is not about becoming a charter. This is about becoming a problem solver, someone so indispensable to the organization that the manager thinks इस person के बिना मेरा काम 4 गुना बढ़ रहा है. ऐसा नहीं काम नहीं है. No one is irreplaceable. I am not irreplaceable. None of you are irreplaceable. Because of Claude, today every single person is replaceable. ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा कंपनी को 2 से 3 हफ्ते का नुकसान होता है in trying to figure out how do you fill in those knowledge gaps. Things used to be irreplaceable before 2021. That is no longer the case. So, what do you want to do there? You want to make sure that your replacement value is so expensive for the organization that they'll think 10 times before parting ways with you. And it's not a political move. This is just purely driven by your competence. You're someone who asks questions before, under commits, over delivers, and are high impactful problem solving. उसके अलावा let's see, ownership beats past completions. कितनी बार होता है कि you'll be in an organization where they don't have their management plan figured out या फिर organizations change, they grow, funding की वजह से चीजें change होते हैं, people leave, पर चलती किसकी वजह से? इंडिविजुअल कंट्रीब्यूटर्स की वजह से, इंजीनियर्स की वजह से. Those are the people that are actually driving the day-to-day functionalities of a company. So it is very important to know that even if organization mein management changes, that it is these people eventually that are driving growth, that are driving change. So the more ownership that you try to have on systems makes you both indispensable and also extremely valuable to the organization that you're working, and eventually buys you a lot of trust because you become the de facto person in charge of this model. कि रात को 4 बजे update करना हो, totally they'll depend on you. So it does things for your work-life balance, and work-life balance is something that is, some people call it a myth. ऐसा नहीं है कि नहीं होता है. Balance सब अच्छे से होता है. In your early careers, my strong recommendation to all of you is forget work-life balance. Sacrifice work-life balance to gain competence, not for the organization, for yourself. So there's a very difference, a key difference between companies saying कि forget work-life balance, काम करो, मेहनत करो, TCS, Infosys were saying things. मेरा कहने का purpose वो नहीं है. My objective is, even though I'm saying मेहनत करो, forget work-life balance, forget Saturdays, Sundays, put in your head, do hard work. But my objective is मेहनत खुद के लिए. Work for yourself. Work for yourself so that you become indispensable to whatever organization you decide to go, so that you never have to be hunting jobs. Jobs will always be hunting you. और होता यही है. I've not given or applied for a role in the last, I believe, 6 years. But every year I at least get 50 to 100 people trying to get me to interview in their companies. And like I've been working in the industry for about 10 years now. There's a lot of different things that I'm doing other than my work with Callbox as well. But you want to be that person for whom uh, the people, the job seekers, all of these people trying to fill in these positions, they're looking for you. और वो कब हो पाता है? When you put in your time, effort, energy in defining and getting your competence. Now comes in criticism, failure, and conflict. Um, you know, it's very important to figure out how do you address criticism and conflict properly. Because organization में, when you start, you won't have a lot of competence. You won't have a lot of experience. And mistakes will be made. I remember there was a time when, very early on in one of the companies that I was working at, I made a blunder. I released something, and that ended up breaking something else. And I had the boss come in and call me. And again, this was after I double checked everything, but I still missed out on something key. And my boss told me that, you're a pretty smart guy, but a second mistake like this will mean termination. This was my month two at this organization when there was a lot of other things and chaos happening. That was also the last mistake I made after that for the next 7 years when I went over there. So mistakes happen, but it's all about what do you do after that? Like, what is your mentality? How do you take criticism? गलतियां होगी. आप project manager हो, आप software engineer हो, आप deployer हो, आप tester हो, आप machine learning engineer हो, AI engineer हो. There will be things that are out of your control. There will be things that were in your control and then still messed up. So भी those people who are reliable, who are trustworthy, and who I can depend on, उनके लिए कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. उनके लिए गलतियां माफ है, लेकिन सात खून माफ नहीं होते. So again, you can't make the same mistake twice. It is very important to take failures and criticism and grow from it. And any conflict that you have, any disagreement that you have is not an attack. So it is very important to have your emotional control with the objective that you're working for an organization that is paying you to solve a problem and that you made a mistake. And that mistake is unacceptable. Any mistake is unacceptable. So what do you do after that to come back from that mistake is where true growth for you and the organization both comes. It also could be that आपकी mistake हो जाती है, बाद में कितनी बार बोला जाता है कि RCA लो. RCA means a root cause analysis. The purpose of the RCA is to identify not only your mistake, but from a systems perspective, a mistake क्यों हो पाई? Like why were you able to push something that broke something else? Which means testing side में कुछ चीजें test नहीं की गई थी, automation integration side पे कुछ frameworks में कुछ part missing है. तो ये RCA में जब आता है, then it is a job of a systems engineer to then develop processes to ensure कि आगे जाके कोई second person वापस वैसी mistake कर नहीं पाए. So that is where like true engineering comes in. then this is a very simple corporate success formula, which is a combination of everything that I said before. Ki your growth is directly defined by your skill, your technical skill, competence, ability to write code, ability to understand English, ability to understand communication, ability to understand logic with what you were told, ability to ask the right question. These are all skills. मल्टीप्लाइड बाय रिलायबिलिटी, आप कितने रिलायबल हो, आंख बंद करके मैं आप पे भरोसा कर सकता हूँ कि आप ये चीज कर सकते हो या नहीं कर सकते हो. मल्टीप्लाइड बाय विजिबिलिटी, आपका काम कंपनी में विजिबल कितना है. योर वर्क डजंट नेसेसरली हैव टू बी mind blowingly visible on the front end to everyone else on the work. There are engineers on Meta who worked on things that none of you have ever seen on the front end side, but a lot of back end technologies are being powered by it. So what exactly does that imply? The Does that mean that their work was not seen? No, that's not necessarily the case. Their work has to be visible by other people in the company, and you get to be your strongest advocate. Multiplied by your emotional control. That is, how do you take and handle problems, difficult deadlines, personal things that are going on in your life. Right now, you guys are too young. You won't have that many other personal chaotic things. Most of you. Then eventually, a lot of you will start having other personal things going on. How do you be stoic in all of that and then still allow your work to be not for the organization, but for yourself? Because you are working for the organization, there's a certain duty that you hold towards the organization, but a bigger duty towards yourself to be your absolute best self ever. इनमें से किसी भी एक चीज को निकालो तो आपकी ग्रोथ रुक जाएगी. दो चीज को निकालो, I any two from this, your growth will stall. और तीन चीज को निकालो तो growth stall के साथ में आपको खुद को निकाल दिया जाएगा. So it's important to factor in this in mind on how important your skill, reliability, visibility, and emotional control is. And then you know you only have to remember reliability beats brilliance, trust compounds faster than talent, and your behavior, your sincerity will shape your trajectory. So if there's any question that you have, now I'll be taking it. This is Vivek. I have a QR code and an email address for anyone who wants to reach out to me. Along with Callbox, I recently moved back to India and started my own company called D Project Labs and Glamify.ai. And I'm also the chief AI officer at another company called Data Grid Solutions. So there's a few other things that I'm also trying to do, but that's it. If anyone wants to take any screenshots, I'll just leave the screen on for a couple of seconds. If anyone wants to connect with me for any other things, you can, and I will open the floor for questions. Any questions?
Hi Vivek. So I wanted to ask that when you were studying, so I think it's probably 8 to 9 years back, am I right?
2015,
So
I graduated, so a little more, 11 years.
11 years, okay. So what is the difference like when you are studying at that time machine learning and when you start studying machine learning now? So do you focus more on using AI tools because back then you had to go through all the documentation to find even a simplest function, but now you could just ask AI tools about the function and they will give you all the information.
I think I also got relatively lucky because I remember 2012, 2013, we had the subject called data warehousing and mining, and Kiran Ma'am was teaching it. And then we had a couple of other subjects. Um, there were blogs, like, not Medium, but towards data science and a few other blogs that already started talking about, how do you incorporate a bag of words knowledge, KNN, and like how do you start using it. तो बुक से तो मैंने कुछ खास पढ़ाई की भी नहीं थी. आई थिंक आई बॉट द बुक. मेरे पास अभी भी बुक मेरी लाइब्रेरी में पड़ी हुई है, वो वाली फ्रॉम लाइक 13 years बैक, बट never actually opened and read more than 4 pages. That being said, books aren't obsolete, but it is more important for people to think about everything from a problem solving perspective. So my recommendation is कि आप Kaggle पे जाओ. Kaggle पे या
Okay.
तो डेटा सेट उठाओ, या तो आपको क्या सीखना है मशीन लर्निंग या एआई साइड में.
Hmm.
There's many different things in AI. In AI, there is applied AI, there is agentic AI, then there is the traditional machine learning, there is computer vision. So if you are studying and if you have a year, my recommendation is आपको सबको ये चारों चीज के बेसिक्स तो आने ही चाहिए. Non-negotiable for all of you to know what neural networks are, what hyperparameter tuning is, what transformers are. How do you
Hmm.
work with BERT? How do you work with LSTMs? And then how do you work with Quen? A Quen is an LLM. It is relatively easy to self-host. Uh, and
Okay.
you can work with your professors, you can work with labs, you can work with the GPU and figure out how do you train a model that performs relatively well on that. There are notebooks in Kaggle, and there are uh, custom curriculums that you can set both in ChatGPT, Claude, and Notebook LM. So what I do, even now, for any training that I want to do, and I mentor students and early career professionals from time to time. And what I do is I give them Notebook LM sessions that directly this is some particular type of content. Sometimes it can just be a few optimizers like add-in or a few other loss functions to only understand small components of these calculus functions. So this will help all of you understand your machine learning and your deep learning. इसके बाद में आता है agentic framework. Agentic framework में land graph है. There's a lot of different ways that can teach you how do you work with LLMs with APIs. And those are also things that you just need to know, even though those are traditional software engineering. APIs है कुछ नहीं है ट्रेडिशनल सॉफ्टवेयर इंजीनियरिंग में पहले APIs होते थे endpoints होते थे उसके साथ में अभी LLM होती है कीज होती है मिस्टर गूगल और गूगल का तो की भी फ्री है फॉर नॉट ओनली स्टूडेंट्स there's a lot of daily usage that you get I believe anywhere up to 3 to 400 rupees where with the Google Gemini key it's free so start learning these frameworks these technologies to be able to build solutions because today, if all you have is a neural network that is doing something, but not a great way to present what exactly is it that you build the neural network on. So you will be out competed by those who already have built a report, have built a LAMP stack or some sort of a web dashboard that integrates with the model. That also does a few other things. So my recommendation is थोड़ी थोड़ी चीजें करो छोटे छोटे components ही है. You can have Claude and GPT write most of the code, but you will still need to understand every part of what this does because you are early career professional. You don't want to outsource your brain, your thinking, your fundamental architectural blocks, understanding to these AI, and then be completely dependent on them. So that is what I would do if I were learning these concepts today. एक प्रॉब्लम स्टेटमेंट उठाओ डेटा का एक कोई भी मॉडल बनाओ उसके बाद में उसको डैशबोर्ड पे कैसे प्रेजेंट करना है और उसके बाद में उसका एक रिपोर्ट कैसे बनाना है like an executive summary report that you will present to the CEO that has less than 90 seconds to skim through the entire report. So it still needs to have your finding. It needs to have like an index so that he can click, see the get to the conclusion, look at the report, and then come back up and then read anything more if he wants to.
Okay. So that made it much clearer for me. Thank you.
Welcome. Any other questions?
Uh, Jeel is asking in the chat if you could share your LinkedIn profile.
Akshat, I'm sure you have it. You can share that in the chat with them.
Okay.
Um, again, like final last 30 seconds. Any other question that anyone has? देखो तुम लोग को टाइम मिल रहा है अगर इंटरेस्ट नहीं है तो कोई बात नहीं लेकिन you know, never miss out on asking relevant questions when you have someone who's giving time to you guys. क्योंकि मेरा इसमें कोई स्वार्थ नहीं. Of course, I mean, I want smart engineers and I want to work with smart engineers. And whenever we have defined position and key openings, I'll advertise it directly to Ruina ma'am, to Kushali ma'am, to I forgot please. Placement officer sir का नाम क्या है? Kavekar sir, right?
Yes.
Kavekar sir. So obviously, I'll be reaching out to them for key openings that we have. Uh, but again, the floor is yours. And if no one has any questions, then no problem. Yes, so
Good evening, sir. Am I audible?
yes, Bully.
Yeah. So, since you are from ML and deep learning background, so one of the fundamental aspect of machine learning and deep learning is the math behind it. So, on a production level and at a company level, how important is understanding the math behind all these LLMs and deep learning architectures?
Um, how important is kind of दो आंसर. एक तो एक generic understanding. So you will be a much better engineer and a much important engineer for any company If you are better at math, can you survive without necessarily knowing the deep math? Yes. Do I recommend it? No. The reasoning behind it is if you understand the mathematical aspects of it on a much deeper level, then you can also go towards the side of building these applications, building these larger models. इंडिया में बहुत सारी कंपनीज है जो आप खुद के एलएलएम्स बना रही है, राइट? सो उनको जरूरत है उन्हीं लोगों की who understand the fundamental aspects of the technology and calculus. If you don't understand those, then you can work on the applied side where things directly work, but you want to be able to work on the side that is trying to build solutions from scratch. And not everyone has the mathematical temerity to understand those level of concepts. So it's also on yourself कि आपकी अगर लगता है आपको आपकी capacity है, तो जितना deep maths is core compared to everything else, बाकी सब skills बाद में mathematics and core math of the calculus of these models is the most important skill today and will continue to be for the next 15 years.
Okay, thank you so much.
We have next.
We have Dhruv Mehta.
Hello.
Hello.
Actually, I just wanted to ask, like, when you hire a fresher as in a company, like as an undergraduate, so what do you expect from a fresher? Like, in a particular domain, what does he have to know before uh, joining your company? Like, any like prerequisites or something? Like every fresher should know before, like, suppose we take AIML domain. So what should he know particularly first to be eligible for that role?
तो है ना, हर रोल की है ना एक अलग डेफिनेशन होती है। कंपनी में भी है ना अलग अलग प्रोजेक्ट्स होते हैं, अलग अलग टीम्स होती है, अलग अलग रिक्वायरमेंट्स होती है, बिगर कंपनी, स्मॉलर कंपनीज। बड़ा मोटा मोटी एक जनरल एलिजिबिलिटी के लिए आज की तारीख में a baseline expectation for everyone is you need to be able to understand, looking at any data set, what model do I need to use, whether it's a machine learning model, whether it's a deep learning model, whether it's a transfer model, whether it's a smaller LLM to solve this problem. You, a fresher doesn't necessarily need to know the GPU optimization. If you understand Docker, Kubernetes, and all of these, then it is much better. But do not think of freshers also as freshers, क्योंकि organizations को चाहिए experienced लोग at the budget of freshers. And you may find it frustrating, but that is the reality. और ये reality क्यों है? क्योंकि आज की तारीख में like someone with 1 year of experience, 2 years of experience, and a monthly $200 cloud code subscription is outperforming people with 10, 15 years of experience. So that is why 1 year भी क्यों चाहिए? Because a lot of people don't want to train people into being corporate ready. Corporate ready कौन सा वाला? Reliability, communication time पे नहीं, bullshit excuses, student attitude and mentality. People don't want to deal with all of that. People need production ready employees. और students को लगता है कि ये ना unreasonable है. What kind of stupid mentality is this? वो झाड़ से सीधा expert genius पैदा नहीं होते. But that is the reality. That is the world you guys have. It's a very cutthroat, competitive world. If you want to think about, the absolute best possibilities that you can have, irrespective of whatever the comp structure is. और पहले साल 1.5 साल में, पहले 2 साल में, forget about the compensation structure. Not that I'm not telling you don't ask for money. I'm telling you do not prioritize the compensation aspect as much as the amount of learning that you'll be able to get with who you will be working with and what you'll be working on. Because your first year or first year and a half or 2 years for most people is going to be starting on low salaries. And then the year 3 is where the actual real jumps come in. For those who are already super smart, okay, उनका linear रहेगा, उनका linear में exponential can also be super exponential. But for most of you, उनकी expectation यही होगी कि you need to know a little bit of everything. आपको थोड़ी सी testing आनी चाहिए, आपको थोड़ा database आना चाहिए, आपको थोड़ा सा machine learning, deep learning में से कौन सा model select करना है based on कौन सा data, जिससे उसमें भी किस में मेरा GPU का खर्चा minimum. So in short, someone who can start working without appearing as a fresher, who I can uh, put on my team with one of my smarter senior people as a mentor who can guide over from time to time, but will not need hand holding. That is what today's expectation is. That was not the case 6 years ago. That is the reason why TCS and a lot of these companies have stopped hiring freshers altogether.
So like there's still a mindset like अभी भी मतलब when companies come, तो डज वो लोग ऐसा सोचते हैं क्या कि मतलब बंदा कोड तो सीख लेगा बट उसको पूरे कंसेप्ट आने चाहिए, बिकॉज जीपीटी मतलब एआई प्लेटफॉर्म्स तो है ही हमारे पास.
कोड कॉन्सेप्ट्स नहीं आने चाहिए, उनको सिस्टम्स आने चाहिए. देयर इज अ डिफरेंस. एकेडमिक कॉन्सेप्ट से किसी को कोई मतलब, आई डोंट केयर ऑन हाउ गुड योर अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ knapsack is. What I care is, are you able to work in an algorithm, define it, deploy it with proper test framework that can work well with what I have? So every single one of you needs to have your GitHub populated with actual code and not shitty ChatGPT written code. uh, Code that you can explain on a call if someone looks at your GitHub and asks you. Because this is what I've also done. Like I've conducted over 3,000 interviews I've taken over the last 7, 8 years. And this is where a lot of people fail, where they'll send their GitHub. But when I'll ask them, can you explain something about this project that you had in your GitHub? They can't. And it is more so of a problem over the last 3 years. क्योंकि जिन लोगों को GitHub भरना था उन्होंने चैट जीपीटी से कोड कचरा लिख के भर दिया. But they can't explain the fundamentals of what exactly it is done. उसमें भी कुछ थे जो जिन्होंने यूज चैट जीपीटी किया था, बट एटलीस्ट उनको अंडरस्टैंडिंग तो थी. So you have to figure out how to be smart about using AI, where you still understand systems and frameworks, actual systems and frameworks, not concepts. I don't care about concepts.
सो एज इन आपका डोमेन एआई एमएल है, तो हाउ डू यू एक्सपेक्ट एज अ फ्रेशर, लाइक फ्रेशर को आप क्या एक्सपेक्ट करते हो कि उसको एआई एमएल में ऐसे ऐसी जगहों पे स्पेसिफिकली एआई प्लेटफॉर्म्स यूज करने चाहिए ताकि वो उसके लिए यूजफुल होगा, लाइक व्हाट्स अ पर्टिकुलर मतलब कहाँ पे आप
मैं
ज्यादा.
समझ नहीं रहा. I'm not understanding your question, and I don't think you are understanding what my answer was, because it seems very repeating. Can you ask exactly what you mean?
व्हाट्स सर.
I think you did not understand what I was trying to say, because you are asking me again the same question. So again, repeat your question, but in a different way, because I think there's some disconnect.
ओके ओके ओके, आई जस्ट
हाँ हाँ,
गेट बैक
repeat,
विद.
repeat. डोंट वरी, मैं
ओके.
कोई एग्जाम नहीं ले रहा हूँ. आई एम सेइंग कुछ डिस्कनेक्ट है. मैंने जो बोला तुम्हें समझ में नहीं आया है. व्हाट यू आर सेइंग आई कांट अंडरस्टैंड, क्योंकि इट सीम्स दैट यू आर आस्किंग द सेम थिंग अगेन एंड अगेन एंड अगेन. एंड व्हाट आई एम सेइंग इज वेरी सिंपल. Be smart about where you're using AI. Not every organization wants you to use AI. ये मैंने मेरे प्रेजेंटेशन में भी बोला. You use AI to learn to be a better engineer. But I'm paying you to solve a problem for me. You can use Claude and GPT to understand problem solving, not to put the actual code and then to build systems and frameworks. 9 out of 10 places are not okay with that. 1 out of 10 is.
गॉट इट सर, थैंक यू.
Any other question? Okay, I will take that as a no. Wishing all of you the class of 2027, right? The class of 2027. Best of luck, and go make your parents and your families proud. Thank you. This is Vivek
So,
signing. Bolo.
Vivek, I would like to thank you on the behalf of our department. The practical insights which you shared today, I think will really help us bridge gap between theory, what we are learning, and what matters in the practical world. For me, the highlight for today will be how consistency matters in every sprint you work, and you should be more reliable to the company, and even your smallest mistakes count there. So yeah, thank you for being so open and sharing your
Consistency के साथ में एक और
experiences
चीज मैं
with
कहूंगा,
us.
communication. Communication is very key. Every single one of you, I very strongly recommend आप किसी से भी बात करो. Even if your head sorts of phases away, listen, बहुत ध्यान से सुनो. Prepare religious meeting notes of everything that you're meeting, everyone you're meeting.
Mm,
Use AI to help refine your replies to them. Gestures, initial corporate gestures होते हैं to show someone gratitude कि आपको time दिया उस चीज के लिए. We really appreciate you. You didn't have to do that. Not again different. There's a difference between being a chatukar and being courteous and being a good communicator. तो सॉफ्ट स्किल्स की हमारी क्लास होती थी डीजे में, सेकंड सेमेस्टर में या थर्ड सेमेस्टर में, पीसीटी एंड सॉफ्ट स्किल्स. दैट वाज आउट ऑफ ऑल 8 सेमेस्टर्स मेरे ना फेवरेट सब्जेक्ट्स में से वो सब्जेक्ट्स थे मुझे. अब मेरी जो मैम है उनके साथ मैं अभी भी टच में हूँ. ना तो वो मैम इंडिया में, वो मैम दुबई में, बट वो क्लास इतनी इंपॉर्टेंट क्लास है. वंस यू गेट अ जॉब, ठीक है, जॉब रखने के लिए ऑफ कोर्स रोहिना मैम की क्लास है, algorithms, architecture, these are all extremely important classes. But once you start working, your soft skills, your communication skills are what takes you ahead. Anyway, Akshat, continue.
Yeah, that's it from my part. Thank you once again. I think Ruina ma'am wants to say something.
Yeah. Thank you, Vivek. I know how difficult it is to take out time. आज के ज़माने में इतना टाइम निकालना दैट टू फॉर द स्टूडेंट्स एंड आई एम वेरी ग्लैड कि ये जो हम लोग उनको हमेशा बोलते रहते कम्युनिकेशन का, बट लिसनिंग इट फ्रॉम समवन who had been through these 4 years of journey, it is, I guess, it's a very different thing. And मुझे लगता है वो लोग अभी बहुत अच्छे से समझ पाए होंगे चीज़ों को. थैंक यू सो मच विवेक, इतना अच्छा प्रेजेंटेशन के लिए. दैट टू आई एम कंटिन्यूसली लिसनिंग फॉर लास्ट 1 hour.